Let's begin with the topic of the day. Now, before I start, kindly note that this webinar is brought to you by CHRMP, Certified Human Resource Management Professional. This is a global certification in human resource, and the certification is awarded in association with Pearson VUE as our testing partner. This certification is available in 190 countries across 5,600 test centers. And for details, you can visit www.chrmp.com. Right now, to start with the topic, what is the topic of the day? The topic of the day is how to succeed as an HR business partner. I think it's a very, very important question. However, whenever I interact with a lot of budding HR professionals, in fact, not only budding HR professionals, also with senior executives, assistant managers, etc. I see very limited understanding of what HR business partner is all about. So what I would be doing today is I would be probably delving into the history of human resource management. I would talk about what HR structures have been about, what has been the history of human resource, and then probably relate that to the HRBP model of HR being followed by organizations, and what needs to be done by an HRBP, and what would lead to success of HRBP model in organization and of HRBP executives, and help you succeed as a HR business partner. This is what I would be discussing in next 1 hour. Now, coming to, as I said, that before we focus into the HRBP model, I would take about 10 minutes to run you through the history of human resource or evolution of human resource management. Now, technically, human resource is relatively a very, very new term. It's very, very new term, right? And when we say human resource, I think we have to first, in a very, very practical way, define what human resource management is all about. I think whenever we think of human resource management, we think of talent acquisition or somebody recruiting or L&D or compensation benefit payroll. We always think in terms of the activity or the job or the role that we have to execute or implement or plan for in an organization. However, when we talk about HR from an organization's perspective, it sees it as a function. And when we talk about types of functions organizations see, they primarily see two kinds of functions. One is a core function and one is a support function. Now, what are core function? Core function is something which is I would say the heart of the organization, the reason for business of the organization. For example, when we talk about Oracle, it is an IT services firm. When we talk about Wipro, Infosys, Tata Consultancy Services, these are all IT services firm. When we talk about Standard Chartered, when we talk about HDFC, when we talk about DBC Bank, these are all in banking services, right? So anybody any role within the organization which is directly in line with the nature of business of organization is a core function, right? Anything which is directly in line with the nature of business of organization. So a software engineer, a software developer, a software tester, a project manager, a team lead, a project head are all core functions, right? Basically, operations are all core functions. When you go to a bank, the cashiers, the business intelligence guys, the operations guys who are running operations of the bank are all in line with the nature of business of organization, and they are the core functions. So basically, when we talk about departments like sales, marketing, when we talk about operations, these are all in line with the nature of business of organization, because what they are selling, what they are promoting, or what they are doing is directly in line with nature of business of organization. There are some functions which are directly not in line with the nature of business of organization. However, they play a very, very critical role, and they are support functions. right? For example, facility management is a support function. For example, finance and accounts, which deals with taxation, etc., is nothing but a support function. And similarly, when we talk about human resource management also is a support function. Is it clear to everybody? A quick yes would do, right? All that we do, uh, all that we do as HRs are nothing but support function, right? All that we do is nothing but support function, right? From recruitment to training to performance management to complement, etc., etc., etc. Whatever we do, uh, it is nothing but a support role that we follow. So one of the most practical definition of human resource management is not the definition that you read on internet, not the definition which talks about the kind of work we do. From an organization perspective, HR is a support function. And this is something that we have to understand. And this also will help us understand how HR has moved from traditional to a strategic role, and how the support that we are providing to organizations have become very, very critical, right? Everybody with me? A quick yes would do. Great. So what we have just started, and what we have gone about discussing so far is that human resource is a support function, right? Now, we have to also understand that HR is relatively a new term. I think when we talk about HR, about 30, 40 years back, there was no concept of human resource management, right? We used to call it personnel management. It was called personnel management. Yeah, right. Now, slowly, a lot more has come under HR's desk and on HR desk, and it's increasingly being called human resource management, talent management. Different terminologies are being used, but personal management would focus on the administrative side of human resource. And probably to understand this uh, better, I would try showing you this graph, right? Yeah. So when we talk about an HR journey, if you look at how things have moved from 1819 to 1913, 1915, it was all about welfare officer. From 1914 to 1939, it was labor manager. Then the whole idea till late 1970s was the idea of personal management, where administrative focus, compliance focus, traditional mindset, limited scope of activities that you would do, all that was seen. 80 onwards, apart from administrative activity, when organization started considering human resources, human as resources. Earlier it was only assets that they owned, physical assets that they owned, but the whole idea of humans also being an asset and human also being a resource, the whole idea of human resource evolved. And since 80 till date, we have seen a huge journey of how human resource management has evolved. And if you see in these last 3 to 4 decades, HR itself has seen three forms, three shapes, right? First being task-based HR, the next being skill-based HR, and then currently what most of the organizations are either transitioning into or have increasingly started following is competency-based HR, right? Task-based HR was when processes, systems, etc. within HR run by mapping tasks. So when you are doing performance appraisal, when you are doing training need analysis, when you are implementing training or conducting training, or when you are doing recruitment or doing performance appraisals, review, anything that you're doing, even when you are doing compensation benchmarking, you are keeping in the mind the task a person does. The focus is only task. So initially, early age HR was about mapping the task a person does, and then evaluating people against their ability to do these tasks and then probably make a hiring decision or a promotion decision or a transfer decision or a training decision, right? Or a compensation decision. However, soon we moved that only ability to do task was not important. It was also important that people are skilled. So if you have a skill, they can go about doing the task. If somebody is not a programmer yet, but if they have analytical and logical ability, then they would be able to program well. And with this notion, a lot of decisions in terms of hiring, training, compensation, appraising, promoting, etc., started working. So HR evolved from task-based to skill-based. However, at a certain stage, they realized that people, even if they have knowledge of doing a task, or also even if they have uh, skill, it's not necessary that they are able to successfully with the result that the organization want, uh, they are able to achieve it. And that led to competency-based HR. Competency is a big topic, and probably we'll do one webinar on what competencies are all about. However, when we say competency-based HR, you can just for time being understand that it is measuring everything against the outcome that we are looking at, comparing. So basically, if you look at an interview evaluation form or a performance evaluation form or a training need analysis form or assessment form or anything that you're doing, it would be very different in task-based HR versus skill-based HR versus competency-based HR. So HR has gone full throttle, and it's important to understand this with the perspective of HRBP, because this has been one of the key reasons why HR is increasingly becoming strategic in nature and moving from not just measuring ability of people to do tasks, but results individuals and organizations want to create, right? So this shift has resulted in giving more importance to the role of HRBP, and not only role of HRBP, but HR in general has become more prominent within organizations, right? Everybody clear with what I have gone about discussing so far? A quick yes would do. What we have discussed is we have discussed history of HR. We have talked about HR being a support function, and that's the best definition that HR can have. And then we have gone about discussing the personal management versus human resource bit, and then we have gone about discussing evolution of HR from task-based to skill-based to competency-based, right? And if you look at HR has shaped up like this, from HR administrative utility to HR's functional expertise to HR strategy and business partnership to predicting what can be done from the aspect of HR outside in, right? You from administrative role to a predictive role, that has been the evolution of human resource, and HRBP has a very important role now to play in all this. So with this understanding, we'll move into understanding the model of HRBP. But before that, again, a quick yes from everybody who's attending this webinar about that you have gone about understanding what we have discussed. Okay, great. Okay, now when we talk about HR, organizational HR models, you primarily see two models. One is a traditional model, and the other one is human resource business partner model, or HRBP model, right? Now, traditional model is also called corporate HR model, right? Now, what is a traditional HR model? A traditional HR model is typically that HR is unified, it's centralized, it's at one place. Depending on the number of people in the organization, you have HRs supporting them for various aspects that they go about supporting. And basically, when we say what they support. They support what HR does in terms of resource planning, conducting job analysis, recruitment and selection, maintaining employee relation, performance appraisal, compensation management, training and development. These all functional activities are done by traditional HR apart from record and bookkeeping and other administrative activity that anyways HRs do, right? So basically traditional HR model, one is what they are doing, and basically they are focusing on these six key things within HR, which is recruitment and selection, training and development, compensation, benefit and payroll, performance management, industrial relation or employee relation, and administrative HR. These are six key components that traditional HR model is focusing on. And I would not say that HRBP is not focusing on these. However, the way it's all about structuring, how it has been structured. So when we talk about traditional HR, and because the webinar is about HRBP, I would not take too long to discuss the corporate HR model or the traditional model. Also note that traditional necessarily doesn't mean bad. In certain setups, a traditional model may work better than HRBP model. It depends on the organization structure, the way it's shaped up, the number of locations it has, what the culture is, etc., 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 what the hierarchy is, the owner's mindset, etc. So it might not be necessary that HRBP is necessarily the right model. However, when we talk about traditional model, there have been a lot of improvements or enhancements and flexibility that HRBP brings, which traditional model doesn't have. So basically, traditional model is very, very centralized, is very, very hierarchical. The way budgeting runs, the way decision making runs, there are power centers within the HR department which are being created, and the focus is implementing the HR plan, right? The focus primarily is executing with structured KPI outcomes that they have to achieve within an organization in terms of what they want to create as a result in this six verticals. That is what they are doing. So if the focus is cost reduction, then the focus is cost reduction. If the focus is talent acquisition, then focus is talent acquisition, and they are going about doing it and achieving it. However, it's happening in a highly centralized model. So basically, maybe it's being driven from one place, and with clear HR goals that needs to be achieved based on on one time, or let's say quarterly or half yearly or annual assessment of HR needs. A plan is created and implemented in the traditional HR model. Now there are some benefits for this, and there are some demerits of this. I think one benefit is that it's cost effective. So HR being a support function, it's not earning revenues for the organization. So it's cost effective to have a smaller HR team, and employee versus HR versus employee ratio being less. Let's say 1:200 employees, you save on the cost that you pay to HR. So there's a clear hierarchy, there is ease of decision making, and the processes are well defined, created and followed. So it's process oriented. So you have all this as benefits or advantages of the traditional model. Second is that it's primarily what it's primarily doing is that it's supporting. It's and this is a disadvantage because it's not giving strategic inputs to business or to employees in terms of what can be achieved or what can be done. And as it is not completely aligned to the organizational goal. It's somewhat aligned, but not completely. So, for example, it has to be flexible enough in this changing environment. Organizations have realized, businesses have realized that setting up long-term goals or mid-term goals or short-term goals, the duration is very, very flexible. So earlier long-term goals, organization would plan for 10 years. Now, long-term goals maybe is 2 years or even 1 year, right? So you need a much more flexible structure, which does not work on an annual or a half yearly or a quarterly strategy in terms of supporting employees. It needs much more, and for that you need a flexible structure. You don't need a centralized hardened structure to be able to support that, right? It's more of an implementer than a planner. So decision has been made by the leadership, by the management, and now HR is just going about implementing it, and it's not necessarily responsible for results and outcomes other than the department that they are in, which is HR, right? So when we talk about the traditional HR model, uh, as I said, the structure is such that it's more centralized, it's more hierarchical, it's less flexible, and it's not completely aligned to what organization wants as to be achieved in the way it wants to be achieved and with the timeline and with the flexibility it wants to achieve. So traditional model has these demerits that we talked about, but it's, as I said, it's more cost effective and there is ease of decision making as well. Now, coming to what human resource business partner is all about, HRBP. I think I'm sure that all of you would have been hearing a lot of this terminologies when people are looking for jobs or otherwise getting an input from somebody in HR. People are looking at starting a career in HR. You know, they keep hearing HRBP, human resource business partner, and with a very generic idea of what the job entails. So in this webinar today, we would be focusing on understanding HRBP in its entirety, not necessarily from a job description that you read out of a job site, but in terms of how the whole department is structured, what it's aiming at achieving, and what are the deliverables that it aims at meeting, and how it gets aligned with the business, how it becomes more strategic, etc. We would be talking about all of this in next few minutes. Right? Everybody with me? Yeah. All of you are able to hear me? All of you are able to see me? Right. Wonderful. Great. Now, so one of the models that 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 defines the HRBP is the Dave Ulrich model of HR roles, right? It talks about process, and it talks about people, and it talks about day-to-day operations, and it talks about future and strategic goals. And then it divides the entire support role of HR into 4 different domains. It divides it into 4 different domains. So you have administrative role, you have employee support role, you have change role, and you have a strategic role. And he goes about calling it administrative expert, employee champion, change agent, and strategic partner. So Dave Ulrich has gone about defining this model. There are different models also that otherwise exist. You have a Harvard model, you have 5P model, you have different models, but just for convenience of explanation, I have taken up this model so that you are able to, and the model again is just a concept. Now, how organizations go about applying it in real life, in business, is something that we will see through examples or otherwise, right? So we would also be focusing on that, but just to broadly define an HRBP model, you mainly you will see 4 kind of roles, right? That of a strategic partner, of a change agent, of an administrative expert, and of an employee champion. Now, to understand this little better in terms of what these roles are all about, strategic partner aims at achieving these 5 things. A strategic partner improves and brings into line strategies with business. It helps line manager in solving organizational people and change related issues, right? A lot of times the line managers, the first time managers, the second time managers, their inputs do not reach to the business, and they are interacting, they are facing business situations, they are dealing with people, and their inputs are very, very important to bring any kind of impact or change, or reversal or addition or enhancing of people's skills or process or otherwise anything. And strategic partner does that for them on a continuous basis, contribute to management team's strategic decision making. So the kind of inputs that you go about bringing in from the ground to the management helps them make better decisions. It nurtures systems thinking, and it increases customer focus. So the whole idea of when you say business partner, what are you doing? So now it's HR is partnering with the business. Basically, earlier it was a support function. Now it is looking at partnering with the core function, which means it is going hand in hand in terms of catering to whatever you go about requiring as a core function to be able to develop results, right? Or to be able to give outcomes or results. Strategically manages workforce development. So when you talk about concepts like talent development, or when you talk about OD or change management, you are talking about all this that may come as part of strategic partner input, right? Now, these are 5 things that the strategic partner role aims at achieving. Similarly, when you talk about administrative expert, you have administrative expert creating and delivering effective and efficient HR process and services tailored to unique business needs. So basically, you can have different kind of business needs within an organization, right? One team may need X and one team may need maybe A, right? Completely different needs. And normally, if you see, administrative services are all about creating one set of process and applying it on all. Now this tailor makes the whole process for a specific team, for a specific business that the HRBP is aiming at supporting, right? Manage people and HR related costs, so attendance management, leave management, etc., 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 and whatever HR related costs it involves is being managed, ensures internal and external customer focus. Now, with good administration, I think the focus can be created for both internal as well as external customer focus. Basically, external customers within an organization can be any other department, or it can be a client where your organization's resources are deployed or going about working. Put on information technology to briskly deliver quality HR products and services. So all of you would have heard about HR going digital, or the idea of digital HR. It aims at applying IT wherever possible to standardize, to structure, to in a fast pace, quickly and without errors, deliver HR products and services. So this is about administrative HR. And then you have change agent. I think this is also very, very important because the future of HRBP model talks a lot in terms of concepts around OD and change management. Change agents comprehends the organization culture and what is real and what is unreal. Institutionalizes change capability within the organization. I would probably explain this in one go. Assist line managers to lead and facilitate change, act as a consultant in organizational effectiveness, and enhances management development. So primarily, when we talk about change management, I think it's very, very important to, right, from the time to discover or to figure out or to find out what actually exist and what doesn't is very, very important. A lot of times what exists for management does not at all matter to, or it actually is not happening on ground, and what's happening on ground or what's bothering on ground is not reaching out to the management, right? So to be able to gauge these changes, to be able to understand these changes, and with the sole focus of empowering line managers for creating management capabilities to create the next in-line business executives, and to be able to create culture of performance and a culture of change which helps organization achieve effectiveness and finally aim at achieving organizational goals. I think HRBP has to gauge and suggest the business in terms of how this can be achieved or what can be done to achieve this. And the fourth thing is the employee costs, uh, the employee experience, or what you call is an employee champion. I think in this, they are aiming at achieving three critical things, which is employee champion changes strategies and aids implement actions that improve human capital contribution. So basically, what can be done to improve the human capital contribution and what can be done to aid implementing of actions in terms of employee satisfaction and in terms of employee growth and in terms of employee alignment with the vision or mission of the organization is something that is taken care. Build workforce commitment. I think that is very, very important. Retention, commitment, collaboration, execution. These are very, very important words that organizations today look at developing in their workforce, and through gauging the culture of the organization and need of employee, I think HRs have a huge role to play in terms of doing this across. Safeguard reasonable, moral, and impartial people, processes and practices. This is also very, very important. I think the way a lot of times, most of the time, a lot of complaints that people have is that the system or the process or the manager or the person or the policy is unfavorable to them but favorable to some. I think it's very, very important that organizations go about creating a level ground, and what exists on paper and what becomes implemented on ground, that gap is minimized. And this is something that also is focus of HRBP, right? So basically, four things, again, as I said: strategic partner, change agent, administrative expert, and employee champion, right? To be able to bring process and people together in a way where uh, 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 organizational goals are met, right? This is what the HRBP aims at achieving, and we will discuss now how it goes about achieving that. But is it clear so far? Am I clear to everybody? A quick yes would help. Okay, right. So let's understand this better. Let's aim at understanding the HRBP model better. I think one very, very key part is HR operations, right? Now you would have also heard a lot of openings for HR operations, isn't it? Right? So there is this whole part of administrative HR which is also there, right? Now, when you say that in terms of its roles, its responsibilities, its execution, what does an HRBP model do? Is that an HRBP model keeps HR operations, administrative HR separate, right? So when we talk about all these activities, when we talk about record keeping, when we talk about time keeping, when we talk about payroll, when we talk about vendor management, when we talk about background verification, when we talk about compliance and labor laws, when we talk about HR audits, etc., 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 all this comes under HR administration, or organization increasingly called it HR operations, right? Now, this is one part of human resource which is driven by processes and systems, and it's kept separate. So basically, when you talk about HRBP model, you have HR operations and HR administration for supporting the employees within the organization. However, the role BP, HRBP, when you say manager, business partner, or human resource business partner executive, that necessarily does not have these roles. An intelligent structure within the organization would not have these responsibilities of HR operations or administrations being given to a HRBP, right? To a human resource business partner, executive, senior executive manager, etc., 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 right? So all this is one set which is separate. Now, depending on the size of the organization, you can have only payroll being managed by some set of people, rest things being managed by some set of people, background verification being managed by some set of people, etc., etc., etc. But all this, which is part of administrative HR, process-oriented HR, in some cases, not necessarily people-facing roles. Not all. For example, vendor management may be people-facing, but a lot of other roles might not be people-facing. All this comes under HR operations, right? So all comes under HR. So basically what HR, so to achieve that four aspects that we talked about of strategic HR, of change agent, of employee champion, and administrative HR, an organization within itself breaks down the HR into three components. And the one component is about all the process related HR, which is HR operations, right? The second bit is Center of Excellence, COE, right? Second thing is COE, which is excellence in certain areas. So basically, which areas organizations are looking at creating Center of Excellence? They are looking at creating Center of Excellence in these four areas, right? They're looking at creating Center of Excellence in talent development, which is nothing but learning and development or training and development. It has been increasingly being called with newer names because, as I said, task-based HR became skill-based HR, skill-based HR became competency-based HR. Organizations are looking at an outcome. What is the outcome of good training? What is an outcome when people learn? The outcome is that the talent should be developed, isn't it? So the term terminology that is being used or changed is not without a reason. It's because organizations are evolving their HR departments, their HR processes, and they are calling it what it aims at achieving. So talent development, which was earlier called L&D, or even before that, historically called training and development, is under Circle of Excellence. Compensation benefit planning is under the Center of Excellence. However, payroll is part of HR operations, right? So earlier, if you look at the traditional form of HR, there was one department, compensation benefit and payroll. Here, planning is separated from implementation, which means payroll implementation is part of administrative HR or HR operations. However, the planning bit, which involves setting up of pay slabs, doing point plan or hay plan calculations to come up with the right slab, doing an external equity analysis, internal equity analysis, individual equity analysis, decisions based on performance pay, decisions based on reduction in compensation turnover strategies, all that decisions on setting up of medians, etc. All that is now under circle of excellence of compensation benefit planning. Similarly, under talent development, you might have various things, how training need analysis is done, how design components are done, how you enhance social learning within organizations, how do you develop culture of for L&D, most importantly, how training gets implemented and measured, which is effectiveness of training. All that is something that comes under talent development. Then you have talent acquisition. I think talent acquisition is nothing but recruitment and selection. The outcome is acquiring talent. Recruitment was just about hiring. So when you are aiming at acquiring talent, your whole talent acquisition process undergoes a revamp. The way you go about choosing people, the kind of selection methodologies that you use, the kind of selection tests that you use, the kind of technical and HR specific interview that you conduct, the kind of tools that you use to make decisions. For example, a lot of organizations have moved from traditional way of interviewing to behavioral event interviewing or structured interviewing or competency based interviewing, and that has fetched them very good results at different levels. All that would come under center. All this in terms of developing its strategies, its application, everything would come under center of excellence. And then reporting, which would include a lot of analytics, which would include how the flow of information works, how people are engaging within each other and with the other departments and with the business, what kind of dashboards are needed to see information quickly, what kind of critical parameters needs to be seen and tracked. I think all this is something that is shaping up very, very strongly. So organizations which have already evolved, you have in center of excellence, reporting is being called HR analytics lately. So you have talent development, you have compensation benefit planning, talent acquisition, and then you have analytics or reporting. The idea is to support business with predictable and prescriptible data. Predictable is to be able to predict what's going to happen, and prescribe is that if you want something to happen or if you don't want something to happen, what are the steps that needs to be taken. So this is where HR is heading. So basically, I would not say that HRs are becoming astrologers or fortune tellers, but technically backed with data coming from various departments, individually or from analytics perspective itself per se. I think center of excellence is aiming at achieving all of that, right? So one part of HR is HR operations, which is process oriented, which is specific to aspects like record keeping, file, offer letter, appointment letter, agreements, promotion letters, if there have been show cause notices, appreciation, whatever it is, all that for an employee in terms of keeping all of that, the timekeeping, the payroll, the vendors, the background verification, the compliance and labor law being followed, which is also important because there are new laws that have come into picture like POSH, etc., that needs to be taken care of. And also doing HR audits, the center of excellence is nothing but these four areas, which is talent development, compensation planning, talent acquisition, reporting or analytics, which is being created to be able to cater to the larger model of HR, HRBP model. Now, understand what I'm trying to put across here is that to achieve this, how the organization, how the HR department structure is taking shape. This is what I'm trying to focus on in what we are discussing currently, right? Now, this is what the HRBP model aims at achieving. It aims at achieving strategic role, change agent role, administrative role, and employee champion role. And the way we are looking at achieving is keeping all administrative related, all process execution related stuff under one bucket, calling it HR operations. Again, keeping everything that leads to talent development and better talent management, and on the pursuit of excellence, creating COEs to be able to develop strategy and execute that, and bringing in business partner roles in between to be able to interact with the business and these two to bring more efficiency to the process. So when I say what it's aiming at doing is this is what exactly an HR business partner roles would look like. HR business is getting inputs from executives, employees, and managers, right? And based on this input, it is coming up with the kind of outcomes that needs to be created to achieve organizational objectives or to meet organizational goals. And then it is interacting with HR back office, which is HR operations, or the COEs, to be able to give them input so that they are able to work on the back end and come back to HR business partner, which then goes about applying and implementing those strategies, communicating those strategies, executing those strategies back with employees, managers, and executives, right? Is it clear? Is it clear? Very, very important. At this juncture, if anybody has any doubts, please feel free to ask that, because what I've just tried structuring the whole HRBP for you in terms of where does the BP role falls in the HRBP model. Where does the BP role falls in? This is something that we have gone about discussing. Any doubts? I would repeat it one more time, but before that, any doubts, any specifics that you would want me to focus on or you would want me to cover? Right, certainly, certainly. I will explain with examples and I would solve this across for you, right? So let's understand what are we looking at achieving. We are looking at achieving a strategic role for HR. How are we looking at achieving an exact, we are moving from a support role to a strategic role in HR. Now, to be able to understand this across, how will a strategic role come into picture? It will come into picture when we are able to align HR functions, people roles, the process, etc., with what an organization wants to achieve. A clear alignment with the business needs and the outcomes that the business wants to achieve. Now, this is what HRBP is after, isn't it? Right? Now, how will you achieve that? Now, one way of achieving it is that organizations are increasingly looking at being more agile, being more lean, and to be able to be more lean and be more agile, what it's aiming at achieving is easy flow of communication and easy execution of plans. Very, very easy execution of plans and very, very easy execution of what has been thought of, right? Now, how can you go about achieving that? So to be able to achieve that, how do we structure, if the challenge is that how do we structure our HR department so that there is ease of running the process, the systems, etc. There is ease, there is clarity in terms of what needs to be achieved, and we are able to then align our roles that we do on a day-to-day basis to meet the business objective. How would you structure the HR within your organization to be able to do that. So this is how you are structuring the HR department in an organization. One department, one unit, one vertical within the HR department that you are creating is of HR operations. Now, what is HR operations? Everything that was about administration and everything that was about process, everything that was about execution uh, comes under everything which is about more about process and less about people, right? Comes under HR operations, right? So when you talk about record keeping, time keeping, payroll, vendor management, background verification, laws and compliances and audits, etc., this is purely process oriented, isn't it? This is purely process oriented. You get a data of leave, you calculate the payroll, you get a data of overtime, you calculate the payroll, you have vendors who are coming and catering to for PF, ESI. Not only that, you have vendors who are catering for even L&D or for anything, whatever management. There are background verification that is happening, there are various laws that have to be followed, there are audits that have to be done. Everything comes under one bucket. So you have HR operations of all of it happening as part of one game, and it is not part of any of HRs in any other vertical. So they are completely excelling in this so that the back end of HR is taken care of, right? The back end of HR or the back office HR or the HR administration or HR operation is completely taken care of, right? So this is how you're structuring the HR department. One part is HR operations completely. The other part is people related. Now, what is people related? Uh, Learning and development is people related, isn't it? Upskilling, improving their competencies, improving their skills, both technical as well as cultural, both soft skills as well as hard skills needs to be developed, right? Pay parity has to be achieved. So payroll is the execution part of compensation. Planning can be done separately. For example, how much a company pays is specific to performance or bonus, not the statutory bonus, which is legally, but in terms of performance bonus or in terms of pay parity, in terms of the slabs that gets mapped against each role and different roles, how those slabs work one after the other, how exactly that the whole equilibrium is achieved, keeping what the industry is paying, keeping the performance of individuals, keeping the structure that exists within the organization, etc., 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 and a lot of other parameters. How points get assigned to each activity that a person does or each competency that the person brings in, and how that gets mapped to the net money that is being paid. What are the compensation saving strategies, reducing compensation turnover strategy? All that comes under one bracket. So that is compensation planning. So when you talk about center of excellence, it is talking about all the planning that's happening at various levels, or people development or talent development that is happening at one level, right? So when you talk about hiring people, when you talk about upskilling or training people, when you talk about compensating and creating benefit strategy for better retention, all that comes under circle of excellence. And then you also have reporting, and you also have the analytics that works behind it, all coming under another bracket called circle of excellence. So you have HR operations, which is handling one part, a big administrative chunk of work. You have COEs, which is handling another big chunk of works. But then COEs need data to implement, isn't it? They, if there is tomorrow there is a process issue, people are not happy with the way timekeeping is being done or how payroll is being executed or X and Y and Z being done, they need somebody who goes about solving it for them, getting it done. Somebody is needed to interact with COEs to respond to the business need faster and sooner. And this in between guy is the BP guy, is the HRBP guy. The guy who's interacting with COEs and also interacting with HR operations and supporting a set number of employees for all their HR needs is the HRBP. Right? Are you getting it? Right? This is what it is suggesting, right? So now what does the business need? So for example, the business needs to achieve X, right? Now executives, the top management has decided that X needs to be achieved. Now managers know that for individual managers, A needs to be achieved, B needs to be achieved, C needs to achieve. And if A, B, and C, all three are achieved, then A plus B plus C, let's say, is equal to X, right? Yeah. Now, if a manager is managing a team one, which has to achieve A, he exactly knows what is lacking that needs to be taken care of in terms of people, or in terms of process, or in terms of any support that they need for people development or process development. This needs to be communicated, right? For good communication, or for effective communication and effective resolution and effective action, now you have a dedicated HRBP or a business partner who is able to cater to one team or a set of team or X number of employees for their needs, which are people related or process related, which means which are either related to COEs or related to the back office. Is it clear? In fact, I will discuss cases, so examples will become more clear then. But then, is it clear so far? Is it okay? Everybody got it? What I just said, right? So BP role comes in between. There is HR. So basically, this diagram explains it all. So one side is the decision-making guys, which are the executives, the managers, and employees. And executives have communicated the needs to managers, needs to business partner. Managers have communicated needs to employees. Everything is crystal clear in terms of where organization is heading, what organization goal is being chased, etc., etc., etc. Now, there are needs that the business managers, employees, executives may have, which needs to be catered to, which needs to be taken care of to meet the business objective. And business partner is, by interacting with the COEs or interacting with the back office, is getting it done for the business, right? So basically, I think this sums the business partner role very well, right? HR business partner is a function which works directly with an organization leadership to develop and direct an HR agenda that closely supports organizational goals. All this while, it was all about just getting some HR, making sure a support system is good, which takes care of employees. Now we are talking about clear focus on business goals and what can be done in terms of supporting that they go about achieving that goal, right? So basically, what HR business partner is also doing, I mean, I think this saying is very, very important. I love this saying about business partner. Business partner is with employee for the business, but with business for the employees, right? Very, very important. With employee for the business, right? So it stands with the employee and negotiates and talks and interacts and get things done for the employee with the business, but it also stands with the business for the employees, right? Which means it clearly communicates what business wants, what the business outcome is, what is needed, why it's needed, why is a person needed somewhere, why X needs to be done at some point of time, etc. With the employees, so that the communication, the whole execution part is crystal clear and well taken care of, right? Yeah. Is it clear to everyone so far? Now, with this thought, so this is what is happening, isn't it? you're taking care of everything. You're implementing protocols, you are taking, so there is a overlap, you are a mediator, you are business oriented, you are a service provider. And if you look at what the HRBP is doing in between, is that it has overlaps of everything. It's looking at taking care of all aspects that impact people or employees, and the need kind of support that they need, and the kind of support that they need to achieve business objectives. Their voice needs to be heard, the business voice needs to be communicated down. All that is something that is happening, right? Yeah. Now, so basically, if you look at now, this is the lagging structure, or this is the longish structure. Now, there are different things, isn't it, that HRs are trying to achieve. They're trying to, there is administration, there is procedure, there is uh, consultation, there is planning, there is strategy. But if you see, everything from administration to procedure to planning to strategy, all of them are coming in a way where consulting becomes very, very important, right? Or the key, right? Now, how are you consulting? You are consulting, basically you are working towards solution-based HR, not support-based HR, right? So when you consult, you understand the problem and you suggest a solution, isn't it? So to be able to suggest a solution, you need to be able to consult. And to have that approach, you bring everything that the HR was doing in terms of strategy, planning, procedure, compliance, administration, etc., towards problem solving that can help organizations achieve objective, that can help organization achieve objective, right? Right. Now, if you look at what it's trying to do, these are the roles that they are trying to achieve. They are an emergency responder, they are a strategic advisor, they are an operations manager, they are an employee mediator, right? An emergency responder in terms of quickly responding to line managers' questions, quickly responding to complaints, responding to manager needs, responding to employee needs, preparing to deal with emergency situation. Strategic uh, advisor, just give me a second, just give me a strategic advisor in terms of understanding talent needs of the business, adjusting HR strategies to respond to changing business needs, identifying talent issues before they impact business. So see this, identifying talent needs before it impacts business, assessing the HR implications of strategic options, representing the business units, talent interest within the organization. So operations manager in terms of management, in terms of communicating organization changes to employees, assessing employees' attitude, tracking trends in employee behavior, designing HR programs to support organization culture, communicating policies and procedures to employees, keeping the line managers updated of HR initiatives. They are also employee mediator in terms of managing competing personalities within managing competing personalities in an organization, managing conflict between employees and manager, responding to organization changes, resolving political problem in execution of business plan. They are going to that level. They are going to to be able to understand organization mindset into and people mindset and employee mindset in terms of mediating at a different level altogether, right? Now, when you say what are the key roles, acting as a single point of contact for internal clients. So basically, one HRBP may support, let's say, a team of 85 to 100, like 1:80 to 100, 200. Earlier, the ratio was about 200 to 112. Right now, it's 1:80. So you're supporting for any HR need that a team has, or HR group of teams have. Let's say there are 5 teams in that, each team of 20, let's say 5 teams and size of 100. You're catering to all those 5 teams for any business need acting as a single point of contact for all internal clients, supporting internal clients in achieving their business goals, helping to HR COEs to deliver state-of-art processes, providing instant and immediate feedback on all HR processes, procedures, and initiative, leading change management projects for internal clients and human resources, designing robust succession pipelines, very important, and supporting the talent management for the entire organization to be able to gauge the need for succession planning, for creating the next set of leadership, being able to create a plan for organizational development, is something that they are doing, acting as independent advisors for employees in tough situations. And if you look at the responsibilities, setting challenging HR goals with a close cooperation with HR and internal clients, selling HR projects and initiatives to internal clients and getting their buy-in. So it's not that management is telling you X and you just simply listen. I think that's not what an HRBP does anymore. I think it plays a very, very important role where it makes him heard, right? So these skills now become extremely important in terms of negotiation, in terms of interaction, in terms of expression, in terms of assertiveness, in terms of understanding personalities and behaviors. All this extremely becomes important. Even selling HR projects and initiatives to internal clients and getting their buy-in, acting as project manager for large cross-functional change management projects. I think change management and OD is what is being defined as the future to HRBP. Developing succession plans and manage the performance management cycle for internal clients, being the contributing team member for HR projects, designing cross-functional development programs in cooperation with training specialists, keeping HR processes in full compliance with legal and regulatory framework. All this is something that HR business partner is aiming at achieving now, whether it's as an emergency responder, strategic partner, operations manager, employee mediator, or the key roles and responsibilities. This is what HRBP aims at achieving. So basically, HRBP helps organizations create results and develop metrics that matter. So metrics would not only help for now in terms of review, it would also be helpful in terms of predicting and prescribing of what can happen in future. So it's not only in terms of review. Business partnering involves many challenges, issues, and debates. From the model itself to the titles to performance to relationship, and the tensions seem to go on the role completely. So so basically, whenever there is change in the way you do things, I think this is something which is very usual, right? Even the kind of designations that people have, they fight for it. The way the performance is being measured, they fought for it. The way relationship is being maintained and nurtured, the kind of tensions that get created, all that seems to go along with the role. I think it's the real measure of HR effectiveness are service deliverables and the extent to which it helps meet business objectives. So you have very, very clear KPI here. I think the effectiveness of business partner is what service deliveries you have been able to help, and what has been the business impact. What has been the business impact in terms of improved performance, linking training with results, linking need of business and mapping hiring stuff in terms of reduced attrition due to compensation benefit inputs and restructuring. All that is something that you, and in terms of reporting, in terms of the way you have gone about presenting data, which is helping organizations predict, and the prescribing that you have done, right? So now cost reduction is not the only component, it is one of the components, right? You are not a listener anymore. You have to innovate and you have to be a problem solver. You have to solve problems. You have to be suggesting and implementing solutions. It's not only about listening and your job is done. It's about being innovative on the ground, being able to figure out the problem, to be able to understand the problem, to be able to suggest a solution, and a solution that works, right? That is something that you are doing. How are you doing? Again, as I said, you are interacting closely with the business goal in mind. Uh, Understanding what managers, teams, individuals, executives need. Uh, you are the mediator in between. You are getting inputs from the executives. You are interacting with managers and employees and looking at their needs specific to any human resource related aspect. And you are catering bundles, teams in bundles, or number of employees for all their COE needs pertaining to talent development, talent acquisition, compensation benefit, or HR operations, or the way reporting is happening. Now, how do you implement HRBP? I think it's very important that we choose the right team size to support. We also write down the key challenge areas, and then divide those challenge areas into what is process oriented and what is people oriented. This is something that is very, very important when it comes to implementing the HRBP, right? You choose the right team size to support, you identify key challenge areas, and then you divide the challenge areas into process and people oriented. You you push for process oriented with the HR backend or HR operations. Process issues get highlighted to HR operations and solutioning is kept on track. Analytics is used to support, resolve, and minimize issues for future. Process corrections and improvements are communicated to line managers and employees. So if there has been a process problem, then you get back to HR operations to solve it, and then you keep following up till the solution is reached, right? Now, you use analytics to see what has been the reduction, and that data is something that is kept and nurtured and presented in terms of making sure that resolution is done and the problem is minimized. Whatever process corrections and improvements and enhancement has happened is not kept to yourself or is not made one-time affair, because the same problem can happen again. So it's communicated back again by HRBP to line managers and employees so that everyone is aware, and it is absorbed, right? You get feedback and plan future course of action. You get feedback and plan future course of action. So this is how you deal with process improvements. How do you deal with people improvements, or what you call is employee experience? The right terminology is employee experience. You identify key areas of improvement for employees. You relate areas to work culture, person, and career development. I think that is very, very important that you are able to factor in these three components, whether it's work related, whether it's culture related. Work related can be, for example, a technical training can help somebody work related. Culture related, probably a behavioral training or some kind of mediation or some kind of problem solving or some kind of issue that the person is facing can be sorted. It can be personal, a lot of employee relations, a lot of employee engagement comes into here, where personal and career development taken care of through ER initiatives. Keep business goals in mind and objectives that organization wants to achieve. So all the time that has been the top priority, that you have to keep that in mind. Talk to employees and the leadership team. You have to go about interacting with both. Suggest policy changes, talent development initiatives, talent management suggestions, employee engagement initiatives, and you back it up with data. So you say that if attrition is because people are leaving because of moving to going for higher studies, then you have to back it up with data. If you tomorrow say that there has been issue with customer experience or CSAT scores because of lack of customer excellence or customer service know-how by the people who are technically otherwise brilliant, then that has to be taken care of, right? And once you do all of it, then you again run a communication project. So communicating is key. You do not only communicate with top and employees, which is with executives and employees and managers. You keep doing that throughout, whether it's process or person related, so that everybody knows about it. And then again, you take feedback, plan future course of action. So when it comes to process related, you do these four things, right? When it comes to people, you take care of all these things in terms of its execution. This is how HRBP stuff is. So you have two kinds of issues that you are mainly facing. When you are interacting with managers, interacting with employees, interacting with executives, you are facing process issues and you are facing people issues. Process issues, you are taking back to HR backend or HR operations. You are keeping a track of the solution. You are analyzing the solution and making sure it gets minimized. You are communicating it in terms of the improvements that have been done to the line managers and to employees, and then you are getting feedback and future course of action. It can be anything. For example, there might be a CRM, there might be a ERP software where two different teams might need two different kind of inputs, because otherwise they are ending up wasting a lot of time in terms of dealing with the software, right? Now, let's say there is a sales team and the same sales team is selling to both B2B clients and B2C clients, but B2B clients, the CRM is apt, but B2C clients need some kind of customization which needs to be taken care of, which avoids them wasting time, and that probably helps them achieve business goals. Now, if this is the business problem, then you take this process problem back to HR operations, and then they go about identifying a vendor who can do it across, and then they do it, and then that problem gets solved, and then that gets implemented, and then you communicate that, take feedback, and see if the problem is solved or not, right? So this is something that can be about process improvement. Similarly, when it comes about employee experience, then you identify what are the key areas where improvement is needed. You see whether it's work related, culture related, personal development, or career related. You also keep the business goal in mind that you look at achieving in terms of productivity, revenue, cost, etc. You constantly interact with the leadership team and the employees, and then you suggest changes which are related to policy, which are related to L&D, which is related to talent management, which is related to employee engagement, etc., to solve the issue, the problem. And then once the problem is solved, you run a communication project, and then you take feedback and keep a tab of it. For example, if there has been an issue happening in a team where there has been a lot of customer dissatisfaction because there has been a lot of escalation, then probably the team needs a customer service training. However, it's not necessary that customer service training only is needed, because if you go about digging deeper, you would realize that maybe there is a leadership issue, and because people are not happy with the leader, they are escalating more. And this can be one of the reasons. So maybe once you dig deeper, it can be a simple customer service training problem for all associates, or it can also be a leadership training for that manager who has probably just become a leader for the first time and is finding it difficult to maybe gauge up to that role, right? And then you solve that problem, and then you communicate to the business and also to all the people whom you support, so that similar problems can be identified and solved and tracked, right? So this is about, or it can be anything. As I said, people might be quitting for various reasons. Women may be quitting for childcare issues. Men may be quitting for higher studies. or a group of people may be quitting because they are not happy maybe with the kind of policies that are there, and they want more flexible timing, and this has to be sorted and it has to be taken care of. End of the day, if people are quitting, it is impacting business goals. If people are not productive, it is impacting business goals. If people are not skilled enough, it is impacting business goals. So all that is something that needs to be taken care of. Now we'll quickly do two case discussions, but before we do case discussions, any thoughts, any doubts, any questions? All of you are able to hear me? Right. Now, we will quickly do two case discussions. The case one is of ABC Corporation, which is a large banking and finance company. And there has been issues where people are pushing for a policy change for regular banking and finance professional versus customer support BPO executive, right? So basically, this is the real case scenario that has happened with one of the organizations. Let's, for the timing, we'll just call it ABC Corporation. Now, it is a large banking and finance company which has both banking operations as well as financial consulting, as well as a BPO and customer service division. Now, if you look at banking organizations, the way they have been, they're very, very formal. They are customer facing, so everybody is following up strict dress code, strict timelines. Banking is very key. It's just like medicinal services, so they have to just follow all rules, regulations, policies, procedures, audits, etc. really, really strongly. And because you are having a generic structure, basic structure, or a traditional structure, policies which get applied on majority is also being applied on anybody and everybody, right? However, when you are looking at customer service and BPO roles, you are looking at set of people who are on phone calls throughout and catering to customers and supporting them in their issues and problems and resolutions. And this is completely being done on phone or email, right? So there is no customer interaction, and the kind of audience which are working in this group versus people who are working on regular banking role are very, very different, right? The background, the aspirations, the aims, everything is very, very different, right? Now, the organization was seeing, now this is the case discussion, so I'm just discussing the case. The problem was that the organization was seeing a lot of attrition because of the same set of policies applicable on everybody. Something as small as a dress code where everybody has to be dressed formally all the time and has to look a particular way all the time, being applied to customer service folks was not real, because these guys were not interacting with customers. They were mainly on phone and mainly on email, and it did not matter how they looked or whether they were clean shaven or whether they were X and Y and Z or not, right? Now, this was leading to people quitting because people wanted to dress well, and they wanted to, and with so much options applicable for BPO customer service folks, it was easy for them to switch over and probably choose where they feel more comfortable with and with less restrictions, right? Now, what was seen, now HRBP studied this case and this problem really well. And then when they understood that it was not possible to implement this for the customer service and BPO team because everything was existing in the same building, right? So in the same office setup, there was these guys also working and those guys also working. So one suggestion that was made was that whichever location it's possible, if there is an alternate office, this team should be moved there, and some other team which is in line with this business should come in here, and this business suggestion was taken. And wherever it was not possible, they introduced the concept of Friday casual dressing for everybody. And now this impacted the iteration, this impacted people quitting, and this brought in more stability to customer support and BPO executive role. So this is a small case discussion in terms of how the same policy getting applied on everybody is may not be just how I took up a case of an CRM being applied on both B2B and B2C guys. This might be in the same line, but this is how it worked for them. Another case was for a startup which moved from a team of 50 to a team of 200, right? And because when it moved from a smaller team of 20 to 50 to 50 to 100 to 100 to 200, I think there was a lot of change suddenly that guys who were there in the system had to foresee. Earlier they were doing anything and everything because that is how startups function. There was a lot of time that co-founders were spending with them. They were going out together, they were working together, they're meeting up with challenges together, they were doing whatever needs to be done. They were enjoying their roles because it was challenging, it was giving them a lot of exposure. But now as the organization grew to a size of 200, it was about bringing in systems and processes, which was difficult to deal by people who were already in the system. There were a lot of specialists which were brought in, and they wanted to set up processes because they came up from organizations which already had processes and systems, right? So the existing guys had seniority by their side, the existing guys had the experience by their side, the company association by their side, and for an organization to lose these set of people who were already there versus not having process and systems was a big challenge. So an HRBP then would have to go and study these differences, confront people who are opposing change, run in a change management project really well so that this problem which impacts appraisals, trainings, the way work is being done, the way work is organized, the job descriptions, the competencies, the outcomes, everything otherwise within an organization is taken care of and is communicated well, and people are brought in par with ensuring minimum loss, right? So basically this is what you are doing. If you see in both the cases, you are not only supporting, you are working towards creating a solution to achieve business goals, to achieve business need. This is what you are doing. Now before I come to the end of this webinar, I would like to quickly ask again, do you have any questions? Anybody having any questions? Kindly, this is the time. If you have this question, quickly type it across in the chat window so that I'm able to take this up. So HRBP is for organization as in a whole, but when you go about implementing the HRBP model, you need a, one HR can only take care of need of X number of people, isn't it? So if it's a 1,000 people organization and one person is taking care of 100 people, then you need 10 HRBPs, right, to take care of those 100 needs. And let's say these 1,000 people are doing three different kinds of projects: project 1, project 2, project 3. So in project 1 there are 300 people, project 2 there are 300 people, and project 3 there are 400 people. Then these three HRBPs will be reporting probably to an HRBP manager for each of the project 1, project 2, project 3, which then would be reporting to somebody like an HRBP head or a senior manager HRBP. So I'm not clear with the question. Will it be possible where it existed? Yes, I mean, if there is the old model of HR, you need to change the traditional model of HR to the new model of HR. And the way you would do it is by restructuring the HR department and clearly explaining and communicating with them of how HR operation gets segregated completely, and how COEs gets created, and how HRBP would now work with the business to cater to business needs. Right. So this is what we have learned, right? Uh, Allow me for 5 minutes, because I would not take long, but allow me for 5 minutes, because I'm going to discuss something very, very interesting and very, very important for you. Anybody who's aspiring or is in HR, I have something very good to suggest to take your respective careers forward. So what we have discussed so far is we started with evolution of HR. We talked about HR being a support function, and we talked about task-based HR, we talked about skill-based HR, and talked about competency-based HR, and we understood how HR has evolved in last 150, 200 years, and we understood that from being administrative HR is much more strategic now. We talked about two models, the traditional corporate HR model and the business partner model, and we understood the advantages and limitations of traditional model. And then we moved to understand business partner model, where we understood that it is aiming at doing four things, which is being an employee champion or a change agent or a administrative expert or a strategic business partner. To achieve this, in terms of these four aspects that an HR brings in to the support system, or to the solution system, I would rather say, it aims at restructuring the whole HR department into HR operations, into COEs, which is Center of Excellence, and the HRBP. HRBP interacts with the business, gets inputs from management, from managers, from executives, from employees, and figures out a business problem, and then interacts with backend HR or HR operations and COEs to solve that problem. If there is no problem, then at least the developmental aspect that they are looking at, to develop that to be able to achieve business objective. And this is done by responding well to issues, to complaints, to bringing in operational capabilities, to bringing in this very, very important slide, which I showed, was this, where you respond, you advise, you become an operation manager, and you're also employee mediator. You play these key roles and handle some key responsibilities to be able to drive HRBP, to be able to implement HRBP is the next thing that we learned. We talked about the right size, we talked about key challenge areas, and we talked about how process and people problems have to be separated and dealt with. And then we discussed two cases. Now I have something very interesting to offer you. I'm representing CHRMP, Certified Human Resource Management Professional. We have a level 2 certification called Advanced Certification, which is a HRBP certification, it is available to you in self-paced mode. Also comes with a global certification and a digital badge, which validates that you have gone about learning this, right? If you look at what it brings in all that you need to know in terms of its various modules, of all that we have discussed. Probably I'll just quickly show also that across to you in terms of competency mapping, in terms of learning and development, in terms of talent acquisition, because you would be interacting with COEs. In terms of HR operations, you would be interacting with HR operations. In terms of performance management, in terms of compensation benefit planning, mainly is something that you would be doing that. And the validation, the certification partner is Pearson VUE. So basically this certification is available in 190 countries across 5,600 test centers. This is a sought after certification because it's a HRBP certification, and anybody who's looking at expanding their roles or having enough clarity in terms of what to do and how to do, and move to the next level in their respective careers, or even to look at starting a career, the advanced HRBP certification is very, very important. You can look at this. This is the CHRMP Academy. Once you sign in, you go about getting into the modules where you now can view the modules, and you can learn various concepts associated with.
And welcome to the CHRMP Learning System. CHRMP is Certified Human Resource Management Professional to the CHRMP Learning System. CHRMP is Certified
Right?
Human
So you can go about
Management
watching videos. You can also go about learning different there would be episodes. Each episode will contain some key components of the HRBP part, and each video would be followed by a quiz. You would be writing those quiz and moving ahead, and you would be finishing the course, learning different components like competency mapping, job analysis, performance management, behavioral event interviewing, employee engagement, talent acquisition. You would also be learning about L&D, policy making, compensation planning, etc. So this is a wholesome program, a level 2 certification. You would be doing this certification online in a self academy, in our academy as a self-paced program, and writing the certification exam in a Pearson test center near you. So as I said, it is available in 190 countries across 5,600 centers, all major cities in India or otherwise in Africa, Southeast Asia, Europe, US, UK, Australia have test centers. And as I can see participants from various countries, you can go about doing this certification online.